Kill that fire. Party's over. Now.
This is a smoker officer. I have a city burn permit. It's in that blue binder.
I don't care about your binder. Extinguish it or I'm taking you to jail.
You're in my fenced backyard without a warrant. Touch me, you're making this a $2.6 million mistake.
Hose is right here. You want to watch?
Officer Derek Thorne had been patrolling the quiet tree-lined streets of the suburbs north of Atlanta for 6 years when he made a decision that would implode his career and cost the county taxpayers $2.6 million. He was 32 years old, aggressive in his pursuit of what he called quality of life enforcement, and firmly believed that his instinct for trouble was superior to written law. On a pristine Saturday afternoon in late May, he received a dispatch call regarding a disturbance and illegal burn at a residence in the upscale Oakbridge Estates. The caller was Jessica Vance, a 34-year-old HOA board member who spent her weekends policing the neighborhood for infractions real or imagined. What Thorne did next, ignoring valid city permits, bypassing the front door to enter a fenced backyard and arresting a retired homeowner in front of his friends, would become a definitive case study in how bias weaponizes the police against law-abiding citizens. Before we get into the details, where are you tuning in from? If this is your first time with us, please hit that subscribe button. We believe that accountability only happens when the truth is exposed, and your support helps us keep the lights on. The residence in question belonged to Marcus and Elena Robinson. It was a sprawling 2-story brick colonial that sat on an acre of manicured lawn. The Robinsons had lived in Oakbridge for 3 years, moving there after Marcus retired from a 30-year career as a structural engineer for the state. They were quiet neighbors who paid their dues on time and kept their property immaculate. On this particular Saturday, the sun was high, the sky was a brilliant blue, and the air was filled with the rich, smoky aroma of hickory and mesquite. It was 2:00 p.m., and the Robinsons were hosting a retirement celebration for Marcus's brother, a neurosurgeon stepping down after 40 years of practice. There were no children running around, no loud music booming from car stereos. Just 25 adults, doctors, lawyers, engineers, and professors standing on the patio holding glasses of iced tea and wine, enjoying the weather. Marcus Robinson was a man of details. You don't spend 3 decades ensuring bridges don't collapse without learning the importance of paperwork. At 58 years old, he was methodical to a fault. Knowing that he planned to use a large professional-grade offset smoker for the brisket and ribs, Marcus had gone to the city hall 3 weeks prior. He had obtained a temporary burn permit for the weekend. He had checked the noise ordinance variances even though he didn't plan on being loud. He had even, out of an abundance of caution, sent a notification to the HOA management company detailing the start and end times of the gathering. He kept every single one of these documents in a blue plastic binder labeled Event Permits, sitting on the outdoor table next to the grilling station. He wanted today to be perfect. He wanted his brother to relax. He had accounted for the wind direction, the food allergies of his guests, and the parking situation. But Marcus hadn't accounted for Jessica Vance. Jessica lived 2 houses down. At 34, she was the youngest member of the Homeowners Association board and took her role with a seriousness that bordered on obsession. She had been watching the Robinson property since 11:00 a.m. from her second-story window. To her, the sight of a large black iron smoker on a trailer hitch in the driveway, which Marcus had moved to the backyard by noon, didn't look like a cooking appliance. It looked like an industrial violation. To her, the arrival of several luxury sedans and SUVs didn't look like a dinner party. It looked like a commercial event operating in a residential zone. And to her, the sight of 24 black professionals gathering in a backyard didn't look like neighbors. It looked like a threat to the property values she was so desperate to protect. She didn't walk over to introduce herself. She didn't check the HOA logs to see the notification Marcus had sent. She watched, she waited, and she stewed. When a small plume of white smoke drifted over the fence line, the kind of smoke that smells delicious to most people, Jessica decided she had seen enough. She picked up her phone, but she didn't call the non-emergency line. She called 911. And she didn't say, "My neighbor is having a barbecue." She knew that wouldn't get the response she wanted. She needed to escalate. "There is an out-of-control fire at 420 Oak Bridge Lane," she told the operator, her voice trembling with feigned panic. "And the people there are becoming aggressive. I'm scared for the safety of the neighborhood." The 911 dispatcher, a veteran named Linda, tried to parse the information coming through her headset. "Ma'am, you said a fire. Is the house on fire?" Jessica Vance hesitated for a split second, knowing that a direct lie about a structure fire could be easily disproven, but she needed the police to arrive fast. "There is a massive open flame in the backyard," Jessica said, choosing her words carefully to maximize the threat level. "The smoke is unbearable. It's choking the street. And there are dozens of people shouting. It looks like a riot is starting. Please send someone before this gets out of hand." The dispatcher typed the codes: potential illegal burn disturbance in progress, possible civil unrest. It was a chaotic description that painted a picture of a neighborhood under siege. Officer Derek Thorne was 3 miles away, finishing a coffee break in his cruiser, when the call came across his terminal. Thorne was a man who preferred action over de-escalation. His personnel file was a patchwork of commendations for arrests and a troubling list of citizen complaints regarding rude demeanor and intimidation. He viewed the affluent subdivisions of the county not just as his beat, but as his territory to protect. When he saw the codes flash on his screen, illegal burn disturbance, his mind immediately constructed a narrative. In his experience, or rather within the narrow scope of his biases, disturbance in this part of town usually meant outsiders. It meant people who didn't respect the rules. Thorne flipped on his lights, though not his siren, and sped toward Oak Bridge Lane. He didn't check the specific notes about the caller. He didn't wait for backup. He arrived at the scene at 2:14 p.m., pulling his patrol SUV up to the curb, partially blocking the Robinsons' driveway. He stepped out of the vehicle, adjusting his belt. The first thing he noticed was the smell of barbecue. It wasn't the acrid, choking smoke of a trash fire or a house fire. It was the distinct, sweet smell of hickory wood. Most officers would have paused right there. They would have realized the dispatch information was exaggerated, but Thorne was already primed for a confrontation. He walked past the front door. He didn't ring the bell. He didn't attempt to make contact with the homeowner through the proper channels. Instead, Officer Thorne walked across the meticulously manicured lawn to the side gate. It was a 6-foot privacy fence latched from the inside but not locked as guests had been coming in and out. Thorne reached over, flipped the latch, and pushed the gate open. He marched into the backyard, his hand resting instinctively near his holster, his posture rigid and combative. The scene before him was tranquil. Soft jazz was playing from a Bluetooth speaker. People were laughing, holding plates of appetizers. Marcus Robinson was standing by the smoker, checking the temperature of the brisket. When the gate swung open and a uniformed police officer marched in uninvited. The music didn't stop immediately, but the conversation did. A hush fell over the patio. 25 pairs of eyes turned to the intruder. Marcus looked up, wiping his hands on a towel. He was a large man, 6'2", with graying hair and a calm, authoritative presence born of years managing multi-million-dollar infrastructure projects. He didn't look scared. He looked confused. "Can I help you, officer?" Marcus asked, his voice steady. Thorne didn't return the greeting. He didn't introduce himself. He scanned the crowd, his eyes narrowing as he took in the demographics of the guests. "Who is the property owner?" Thorne barked, his voice loud enough to carry to the neighbors. "I am," Marcus said, stepping forward, placing the towel on the table. "I'm Marcus Robinson. Is there a problem?" "You need to kill that fire immediately," Thorne ordered, pointing at the expensive offset smoker. "We have reports of an illegal open burn and a noise disturbance. This party is over. Everyone needs to clear out." The audacity of the command hung in the air. It was 2:15 in the afternoon on a Saturday. The noise level was lower than a passing car, and the fire was a contained cooking fire inside a certified unit. Marcus frowned, his brow furrowing. "Officer, with all due respect, this is a retirement dinner. We aren't making any noise, and that is a smoker, not a bonfire. I didn't ask for a debate. Thorne stepped closer, invading Marcus's personal space. I gave you a lawful order. Extinguish the fire, or I will cite you for failure to comply. Marcus took a deep breath. He knew where this was going. He had seen the news stories. He knew that as a black man in America, even in his own backyard, even with his wealth and status, his margin for error was zero. But he also knew he was right. And unlike many others, he had prepared for exactly this moment. Officer, Marcus said, keeping his hands clearly visible, I understand you have a job to do, but before you take any action, I need you to look at the documents on this table. Marcus pointed to the blue binder sitting next to the tray of uncooked ribs. It was labeled clearly Robinson Event, May 27th. Thorne glanced at it and scoffed. I don't need to see your scrapbook, I'm telling you what the law is. Actually, Marcus said, his voice hardening just a fraction, that binder contains a permit issued by the city fire marshal specifically for this unit on this date. It contains a noise variance approved by the county clerk. And it contains the written approval from the HOA board. I don't care what you typed up on your computer, Thorne snapped. Permits don't cover creating a public nuisance. We have multiple calls about the smoke and the noise. This was a lie. There was only one call from Jessica Vance. Now, are you going to put that fire out, or are you going to go to jail? By this point, the guests had mobilized. These weren't teenagers. These were people who understood the law. A woman in a floral dress, a district court judge in a neighboring county, pulled out her phone and began recording. Officer, you are on private property without a warrant, she stated calmly from 10 feet away. The homeowner is attempting to show you valid permits. Thorne whipped his head around. Back up. Do not interfere with police business. We are witnesses, a man in a polo shirt said, raising his own phone. He was a corporate litigator. We are recording your refusal to review the exculpatory evidence being offered to you. Jessica Vance was watching all of this from her second-story deck obscured by a potted plant. She felt a surge of adrenaline. The police were actually doing it. They were shutting them down. She didn't care about the permits. She just wanted the disturbance gone. She felt powerful. She didn't realize that the camera angles from the guests' phones were capturing not just the officer, but the absurdity of the entire situation. Thorne felt the control slipping away. He was being challenged, and in his mind, challenge equaled resistance. He looked back at Marcus. Last chance. Put it out. I will not, Marcus said. I am operating legally under City Ordinance 14B. I am asking you to call your supervisor if you are unsure of the code. That was the trigger. Thorne reached out and grabbed Marcus's left wrist. You're under arrest. For what? Marcus asked, not pulling away but tensing his muscles. For what crime? Failure to obey a lawful order and resisting arrest, Thorne shouted. He spun Marcus around. Marcus was a big man, but he didn't fight. He allowed himself to be turned, but Thorne wasn't satisfied with simple compliance. He wanted submission. He yanked Marcus's arm up high behind his back, using a leverage technique designed to inflict pain. Marcus grunted, grimacing as his shoulder strained. Stop! Elena Robinson screamed, rushing forward from the patio door. He has a bad shoulder. Stop it. Stay back, Thorne yelled, his hand dropping to his taser. Get back or you're next. The guests were shouting now, a chorus of outrage. He is not resisting. Check the permits. This is a lawsuit. But Thorne was past the point of listening. He snapped the handcuffs onto Marcus's wrists, tightening them aggressively. He shoved the 58-year-old engineer toward the gate. Marcus stumbled but regained his footing. He looked at his wife. Call the attorney, he said, his voice surprisingly calm despite the pain. Bring the binder to the station. Do not touch the fire. The meat needs 2 more hours. It was a surreal moment of dignity in the face of humiliation. Thorne dragged Marcus out of the gate down the driveway and shoved him into the back of the patrol SUV. The neighbors were out now, watching from their lawns. Jessica Vance stood on her deck, arms crossed, a smug smile playing on her lips. She thought she had won. She thought she had restored order. She had no idea she had just lit the fuse on a bomb that would destroy her life. The ride to the precinct took 20 minutes. Thorne didn't say a word. He was running through the report in his head, figuring out how to articulate the threat he had felt. He needed to justify the arrest. He would write that the subject was belligerent, that the smoke was creating a traffic hazard, that the crowd was hostile. He convinced himself that he was the hero of this story. Marcus sat in the back, the hard plastic seat digging into his spine. His shoulder throbbed. He closed his eyes and breathed. He wasn't thinking about the pain. He was thinking about the timelines. He was thinking about the camera angles. He was thinking about the fact that his brother's retirement party was ruined. And he was thinking about the call he knew his wife was making right now. When they arrived at the precinct, Thorne marched Marcus to the booking desk. The desk sergeant, a man named Miller who had known Thorne for years, looked up. "What do we have?" "Disorderly conduct, failure to comply, illegal burn," Thorne recited. "Subject refused to extinguish a fire in a residential zone after complaints from neighbors." Miller looked at Marcus. He saw a man in a bespoke linen shirt, expensive loafers, and a demeanor that screamed, "Not a criminal." "Sir," Miller asked, "were you burning trash?" "I was smoking a brisket," Marcus said clearly. "I have a city permit. I have an HOA variance. I have a noise variance. They are all in a binder that the officer refused to look at." Thorne rolled his eyes. "He claims he has papers. Probably printed them off the internet." At that moment, the double doors of the precinct lobby swung open. In walked Elena Robinson, flanked by two men. One was the corporate litigator from the party. The other was Marcus's personal attorney who had been on the golf course but rushed over immediately. Elena was holding the blue binder. "My client is being held falsely," the attorney announced, his voice booming. "I need to speak with the watch commander immediately." The watch commander, Lieutenant Griggs, came out of his office. He was a 25-year veteran who had little patience for rookie mistakes and even less for lawsuits. He looked at the group, then at Thorne, then at Marcus, still in handcuffs. "Talk to me," Griggs said. "Officer Thorne entered private property without a warrant," the attorney stated, slamming the blue binder onto the high counter. "He arrested Mr. Robinson for conducting a permitted activity. Here is the burn permit signed by the fire marshal on Tuesday. Here is the noise variance. Here is the HOA approval. And we have video evidence of Officer Thorne refusing to inspect these documents before assaulting my client." Griggs opened the binder. He saw the official seals. He saw the signatures. He looked at the dates. They were valid. He looked up at Thorne. "Thorne, did you check the permit?" "He was non-compliant, Lieutenant. The neighbors were scared." "Did you check the permit?" Griggs repeated, his voice dropping an octave. "I didn't need to," Thorne stammered. The dispatch said there was a complaint." Griggs cut him off. "Your job is to investigate. If this man has a permit, there is no crime. If there is no crime, there is no failure to comply." Griggs turned to the desk sergeant. "Uncuff him. Now." Thorne's face went pale. "Lieutenant, "Give me your badge and your gun," Griggs said, not even looking at him. "Go sit in the conference room. Do not speak to anyone." Marcus rubbed his wrists as the cuffs came off. There were deep red indentations. He looked at Griggs. "I want to file a formal complaint against that officer, and I want the name of the person who called 911. "You'll get all of that, Mr. Robinson," Griggs said, looking weary. "And on behalf of the department, I am apologizing. This should not have happened." But an apology wasn't going to fix this. The video hit the internet 3 hours later. The caption was simple: "Officer arrests homeowner for BBQing while black, ignores permits." The footage was damning. It showed the calm demeanor of Marcus Robinson, It showed the pristine backyard. It showed Thorne's unnecessary aggression. It showed the blue binder being offered and rejected. The internet detectives went to work immediately. They identified Thorne. They identified the precinct. And then the audio from the 911 call was released through a Freedom of Information Act request filed by a local journalist the very next day. Jessica Vance's voice on the recording, hysterical, lying about a riot and out-of-control fire, was juxtaposed with the video of a peaceful retirement party. The internet turned its gaze on her. She was identified within 24 hours. It turned out she worked as a mid-level marketing director for a fashion brand that prided itself on inclusivity. The fallout was nuclear. Jessica Vance was fired from her job 3 days later. The company issued a statement distancing themselves from her values. The HOA board held an emergency meeting and voted to remove her, citing her misuse of authority and the harassment of a resident. She was slapped with a civil lawsuit for defamation and filing a false police report. Officer Derek Thorne was placed on administrative leave, but the internal investigation was swift. The combination of the video, the valid permits, and his refusal to conduct a basic investigation made his conduct indefensible. He was terminated 2 months later. His certification was revoked by the state board, meaning he could never work in law enforcement again. But the biggest blow landed on the county. Marcus Robinson sued. He didn't just sue for wrongful arrest. He sued for civil rights violations, excessive force, and malicious prosecution. His legal team argued that the county had failed to train officers to distinguish between a bias-motivated call and a real emergency. They argued that Thorne's actions were a result of a culture that viewed black men as inherent threats, regardless of their zip code or their behavior. The county attorneys took one look at the evidence, the binder, the video, the permits, and told the commissioners to settle. There was no way they could win in front of a jury. They settled for $2.6 million. Marcus and Elena Robinson still live in that house. They didn't move. They refused to be pushed out of the neighborhood they had earned the right to live in. But the dynamic has changed. The neighbors are more cautious. The new officers who patrol the area know the name Robinson, and they know to check the paperwork before they step out of the car. It's a victory in a sense. The bank account is full. The bad officer is gone. The bad neighbor is disgraced. But when Marcus Robinson stands in his backyard now looking at his smoker, he doesn't just feel the joy of cooking. He feels the phantom weight of handcuffs on his wrists. He remembers the feeling of being dragged away from his family. And that is the tragedy that no settlement check can fix. The violation of the home, the one place where you are supposed to be safe, the one place where you are supposed to be the master of your domain, is a wound that heals slowly. This story forces us to ask a difficult question. Why is the word of a panicked caller automatically worth more than the calm evidence of a homeowner? Why do we allow police to be used as a concierge service for the biased and the insecure? What do you think? Should there be a mandatory penalty for callers like Jessica Vance who weaponized 911? And should officers like Thorne be personally liable for the settlements rather than the taxpayers footing the bill? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. We read every single one. And if you believe that stories like this need to be told, that the truth is the only disinfectant for injustice, then please like this video and share it with a friend. It helps us grow, and it helps us keep fighting. Stay safe, know your rights, and keep your paperwork ready.